Hey everybody, welcome to Hints and Guesses, my podcast. Kent here. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for listening. I want to make a podcast today called When We Are Lost. Maybe it's because I feel a little lost at the moment, and if you've been listening for a while, you know that I just moved to Georgia with my wife and kids, and we're living here kind of in between, living with family at the moment. My father-in-law had a stroke last year, and that was at least part of the reason for being here, but also our own hopes and dreams and imagination as a family for this, next season. And of course, there's always a difference between what we imagine and the facts on the ground. So I'm in that kind of place, and maybe more than that, feelings of lostness are pretty common in the spiritual life, though we avoid them. For obvious reasons. We come up with a million strategies and techniques to to avoid that kind of feeling. And so that's what I want to talk about today, and I want to read some things that help me, and maybe in part I want to remind myself of a few things. And at the very least, if you're feeling a little lost, and maybe I'll say what I mean by that, I'll try to at least, you're not alone in that, and welcome to a dimension of being human. And so that's kind of that's the course I've charted here today. And maybe I'll just say I've got a few things coming up. So a couple of ads, I suppose. I'm now a guide at Animas Valley Institute, and I have my first program here in a couple weeks in Joshua Tree, and it's full. So I'm a co-guide for this program, really looking forward to it. It's a Wild Mind program. That's where I started with Animas, and so I really, really can't wait for that. There might be a waiting list. I'm not sure if that interests you. And I have another intensive coming up in July, a Soulcraft intensive, and this is July 10 through 14, not too far from Telluride, just an absolutely amazing place. I've been there before. And that's, I'll be co-guiding that as well. So all those details are on Animas Valley Institute's website, so you can check that out. Maybe one more thing. I'll probably roll out a few other things between now and then, but just in terms of programs, I wanted to put a couple things on your radar in case you want to join me out in the wild world. So those were two Animas programs, and I'll be speaking August 4 at Denver Community Church. I've been there a bunch. My buddy Michael's a pastor there, and I will do a retreat before or after, or both. I haven't nailed down all the details, around August 4. So, and it'll be not too far from Denver, a couple of hours, far enough so you can get out of the kind of the Denver day traffic going into the mountains in the summer. So, anyway, that's coming up. I'll put those on my website when I know. If you live in that area and you want to just, if you have some interest in joining me, you can send me an email. dobsonpilgrimage@gmail is my email address for retreats and programs. So anyway, that's coming up. I also want to thank my patrons who make this podcast possible. Thanks. A few new ones joined in the last month, so I really want to thank you and welcome you. And your support means a lot. And in March, I'm going to have a gathering, an online Zoom just for patrons, and we can discuss whatever you want and things that have, that you're thinking about, or stuff that the podcast kind of drags up for you. And let's have a online conversation about that. I've done it once before. It's great. So, and the patrons too, there's through the Patreon website, there's a kind of back and forth, and oftentimes I get ideas from patrons. So keep those up, keep them coming my way. In fact, my little shorter podcast, which I'm calling Eat This Scroll, just came out of a conversation with my patrons. So anyway, I'm hoping that community will continue to grow, and really am grateful for all the support. So maybe that's enough in terms of gratitude and some things that I have coming up in the summer. Okay, let's get into it now. And first, I want to offer some caveats here at the beginning, because just saying or calling this podcast When We're Lost, it kind of makes it sound like, well, now I'm going to tell you how to not get lost, and I'm probably not going to do that. and also, maybe in a more simple sense, that I would like to describe some possibilities, like lostness that has a certain flavor to it and some possibilities that might arise within it. I'm not really trying to be prescriptive here, and I don't know the path for you. But I'll try to describe the path for me, or the path described by the poets and mystics and teachers who know what it's like to be lost in a particular kind of way. And maybe here's another caveat too. Sometimes we're lost because we're just neglecting something very basic. Like, we might feel stuck or lost, and really what's happening is that we're neglecting a task or two. In fact, I mean, James Hollis says that depression most readily comes into our lives when we're neglecting a task. Now, it could be a series of tasks that are very concrete that we're somewhat aware of, or they could be tasks that are hidden from our view in some way, and sort of like the tasks of the soul, for example, or the tasks of the true self. That makes it more existentially challenging. But that is at least worth saying, that sometimes we feel lost because we're neglecting something. And that's often a question I ask myself, even now, like, being in a new place, a new land, a new environment, new house, new relationships. I miss, my friends, my contacts, the entire support network I had in Michigan, and I sometimes have to ask the most basic question, like when I feel low or confused about the next step, is there something, is there a task that I know I'm neglecting, that if I did, there would at least be some movement. And so I think that's worth just mentioning here at the beginning. But other times I think our lostness is more existential and more potent, and in some ways more scary. And sometimes it can feel like, I don't know who I am, or I don't know how I got here. Did I choose this? Did I not? What is happening? And I, in a sense, I want to talk a little bit more about that dimension, the kind of lostness that feels a little more existential. But they're not, these aren't unrelated fields. Of course, our own deepest questions and longings and desire for meaning is also connected to the ordinary and the daily and the basic tasks of living a life. And so I'll try not to separate them out too much. Maybe another way of saying is that perhaps it's always both. Perhaps the soul makes its demands on us and pulls us into a kind of existential lostness, and at the same time we have some real basic tasks that need tending to. So maybe as a way of kind of summarizing my caveats here, I was thinking about one of the greatest privileges that I've had in the last few years is meeting with people in a one-on-one setting, which I call companion guiding. And it's kind of like mentoring, and but really mirroring, listening, coming alongside Those are the phrases that best describe it. And I've been doing it for, I'm not sure how long, maybe 6 years or so, ever since I started my training at Animus. And it's funny because, when I was a pastor, that is a part of being a pastor, meeting with people. People want to talk with you about various things. And I had some resistance to it for all kinds of reasons that were my own hangups, really. And but as soon as I kind of stepped out of that role, then I found myself actually not only doing it, but really enjoying it. It's such a valuable part of my work in the world. And Jung says something interesting about the relationship between the analyst and the analysand, to sound fancy. And I'm not an analyst. I mean, I've been to Jungian analysis, and I'm not claiming to be a Jungian analyst, but I'm just using it analogously anyway. And he says, it's working when both parties are changed. And that's a profound statement, and that's really antithetical to most counseling, therapy, even healing practices that are common in our world, where the therapist is this kind of like neutral, unmoved observer. And anyway, he says in analysis, that's not really what happens. And both parties are kind of mysteriously and alchemically changed in the process. And I feel that when I'm working with people, I learn much more about the spiritual life just by listening than sort of, by pulling from my own experience or, offering a bunch of quotes or readings or things like that. I'm changed by meeting with people. And maybe that's a really long-winded way of saying something I want to be direct about, which is the spiritual life is wildly diverse. And lostness is diverse, and the course that we might be called to is wild and unique and has twists and turns that only you can go on. And I've learned that from listening to so many different people over the last few years, and yet there are patterns. And so those two things can go side by side. Here's a interesting part about living here in Georgia. I'm right next to a train track, and there's the train. This is like part of my day world and night world life. There's something like 5 to 10 trains a day that come by. And anyway, thought I'd invite you into it because there's not much I can do about it. So, okay, those were my caveats. So here's where I want to begin. I've got 3 dimensions. I want to talk about the dark woods. I want to talk about sincerity, and I want to talk about standing still, and you'll see what I mean. And so here's the opening quotation from Dante. And this is from Dante's Inferno, his really psychological and spiritual masterpiece, medieval masterpiece, often misunderstood and literalized, at least by many people, and or dismissed as kind of an extended fantasy on hell. But it's really like, what is the underworld like, and what is the spiritual path like? What is descent and return like? What is death and resurrection like? These are the questions behind this evocative, extended poem, really. Anyway, here's how it begins. In the middle of my life, I entered a dark wood, having lost the path, or having lost the way. And what a profound and simple way of putting it. And this is kind of pre-psychology. This is pre-Jung, saying there's the first half of life and second half of life. This is stages of any sort, stages of faith, and kind of psychological sophistication. Before that, there were myths and stories and poems and mystics and saints and healers and shamans, and who knew what the path was like and described it in kind of poetic way. And so in the middle of my life, I entered a dark wood, having lost the way. And maybe I just want to say a couple things about that. The first is that he's describing not the beginning of life, not our kind of adolescent or late adolescent awakening to the world itself and to our place. Like, where do I belong in the world? Where do I belong in the world of social relationships? Where do I belong in the world of jobs and marketplace and economy and love affairs and social networks and community? And those are all critically important to sound fancy and to our own ego growth, to our own ego development in the healthiest sense of that, and to ego growth, to a sense of self. This is who I am in the world. This is how I show up in the world. These are my people, and this is the work that I'm committed to and the work that I'm gifted to help bring forward. And then we enter the forest. We enter the dark wood. We enter a time, a season, a kind of geography, a kind of psychological and spiritual geography or terrain that is unsatisfied with the life we've built, with the house we've built, with the first house of belonging. And that's the kind of lostness I think Dante is describing. So in other words, we've had a few successes and maybe a few failures along the way. And all of a sudden, here we are again. And maybe here we are for the first time, really, asking some more difficult and challenging questions about who we're called to be in the world and where we stand in the world. And what, to a certain extent, we know we're in this place when it feels like we can't go backwards. Like, we can't just redo the first half. Like, I need a better church, or I need a more understanding partner, or I'm going to swap out my social relationship for something else, or I went to school for the wrong thing and now I'm going to go to school for the right thing, and we'll just hit restart. Now, you might do any of those things. I'm not against those, but I don't think that's what Dante is really getting at here. And it's like in The Princess Bride, when they reach the swamp, they have to go through it. They cannot go around it. That's the only way, is to enter more fully and deeply into that kind of lostness, and really that kind of darkness, because he calls it a dark wood. It's not what used to light the way, what used to light the path. I know who I am. I know what I'm up to. I know my people. I know my family. I know what's important. That light has gone out. Some god in the night snuffed it out. And here we are. And I want to say something just briefly about darkness, because every once in a while I get a little pushback from people like, wait, why does it have to be dark? Why does spiritual growth, the path, have to involve dark? Can it be light? Can it be optimism and enthusiasm? And I get the kind of emotional reaction to talking about darkness and the abyss and the void and existential longing and whatever. Those are, these are a few of my favorite things. They don't have to be a few of your favorite things, and I get that. And so there's a little resistance, but darkness isn't, the way I use it, isn't necessarily negative. It's just dark. It's what we don't know. It's what we can't see. We can't see very well. That's the point. And it's like a cloud of darkness keeps us from seeing what's right around the corner. And yeah, it's more like that. And darkness is a lovely place for things to hide. And it takes a certain kind of courage to wander in that kind of darkness. And what might the darkness hold? Well, might hold both positive and negative dimensions of our own psyche, for example. Dimensions of who we are that up to this point are underused, unknown, untapped, repressed, ignored, that now want attention. In other words, I'll be even more simple. Our gifts. Our gifts are just as likely to hide in the darkness as our wounds. And of course, those two things are often holding hands in some way. And so I'm not saying that it's easy, but I'm not saying darkness is necessarily negativity. It's just what we don't know. And even when you look at I just thought of a line from Merton. He says, "I've seen the day and the night is better." This is someone who's spent time, who's reached the middle of his life and having lost the way. And it's time to enter the woods. And he knows something about its quality that's surprising, which is that, in his words, it's better. Now, we don't need to make those like better or worse distinctions. I think he's being poetic here, but there's some truth, of course, in what he's saying. And even God in the Hebrew Bible hides in the cloud. Is unknown. That I don't know how familiar you are with the Hebrew Bible, or the tent that they carried around, or the temple itself. But part of what was required of the priests was to burn incense, this particular kind of incense, and let it fill up the most inner sanctum, because God dwells in a cloud, and in darkness. No one can look directly into the face of the mystery, so to speak, and so the cloud that envelops us is a kind of necessary cloud for us to go deeper, and really for a new kind of intimacy to emerge with the mystery, or with God, or with the divine. Like in the book, The Cloud of Unknowing, it's like, well, we think we know until we don't, and then God descends in a cloud, and the process of unknowing whatever we think we know up to this point, this kind of slow unraveling is just part of the process, and it can have a kind of sweetness to it. Like in the Hebrew scriptures, it says, I think it's in the Psalms, but it's referring back to the time when the Jewish people were wandering in the wilderness, that we ate honey from the rock. And it's that kind of paradox. It's like there's a kind of sweetness hidden in what's difficult, and in what's a bit scary, and what is unknown. And it's there we learn what manna tastes like when we're hungry, or what honey tastes like when we're up against a rock, It's that kind of thing. And so I don't know, what's my point right now? That this is just a normal process of growing up psychologically and spiritually. It's like, I wish it was another way. And though it's dark, it can be sweet. It's also a little like falling in love. A friend of mine said not that long ago, we're talking about his most serious descent really into the underworld early in his life. And he said, but it really felt more like falling in love than what other people, describe, which may be like angst or fear, but it's still a falling. That's the great thing. It's, cliches, they always embed some kind of mysterious truth, like falling in love is falling. It's like we don't know who we are in part. It throws us down in some way. Okay, here's the second piece that I want to talk about, and that is sincerity. So when we're lost, it's a little like being in a cloud, and it's a little dark, and well, what kind of posture can we take? And I'm really drawn to the word sincerity lately, or being sincere. I think it's a better word in many respects than authenticity, because authenticity, it's kind of a drum that people like me and others often, beat. It's like, choose what's authentic, but we often don't know what that is really. It's there can be just as much exertion of the will or the ego or even a complex trying to be authentic. But sincerity is, well, in Latin it means pure, really, or clean in some way, or maybe here's a better way of saying it: free from pretense. Like, wouldn't it be lovely to be free of pretense? And I want to say that's probably the most important ingredient when we feel this kind of lostness. I'm talking to myself right now. What really is true as best we can tell, without pretense, without caveat, without stumbling over ourselves, or talking ourselves out of our own kind of very simple intuitions and feelings and sense for things. Just being sincere. And I want to read you a little passage from Merton. I use this passage at the very end of my book, Bitten by a Camel. So, I mean, it's not like it's that unfamiliar of a passage, but you may have heard it before or seen it in my book. But anyway, here it is. He says, it's a prayer, really. My Lord God, I have no idea where I'm going. I have no idea where I'm going. I do not see the road ahead of me. So this is someone who knows the dark woods here. And I cannot know for certain where it will end, nor do I really know myself. And the fact that I think I am following your will does not mean that I am actually doing so. What a raw and honest thing to say. But I believe that the desire to please you does in fact please you. Now think about that as a prayer without pretense. I believe that the desire to please you does in fact please you. And I hope that I hope I have that desire in all that I'm doing. I hope that I will never do anything apart from that desire. I hear a certain amount of faith in longing and in desire. Desire gets a bad rap in I don't know, in Christianity more generally, but and of course our desires, our instincts can go awry or can dominate our consciousness in unhealthy ways, but there's also something very beautiful and more subtle and more rich beneath the surface, which is what we're really longing for. And here Merton is saying, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what the hell I'm doing, but I have the desire. I have a longing to please you and to walk in that way. And what a straightforward thing to say. And then he says, and I know that if I do this, you will lead me by the right road, though I may know nothing about it. Therefore, I will trust you. I will trust you always, though I may seem to be lost and in the shadow of death. I will not fear, for you are ever with me, and you will never leave me to face my perils alone. What I hear in this passage is sincerity. The sincere desire to align oneself with the mystery of God. That's what he's describing, or whatever you might fill in the blank. What are your most sincere desires? Just your pure, straightforward desires for your own life, and to trust that there is, to trust that sincerity in that sense. It might lead you down a path you know nothing about, as he says. It might lead you down a road that you can't see, but a kind of strange mystery meets you halfway, and There's a kind of withness here. Like Isaiah the prophet, his description of God is Emmanuel, which is God with us. It's like there's a coming together of, in the cloud perhaps, of the mystery and the mystery's aims for who we are and what's meaningful in life, and our own longings and hopes and desires were met on this unknown road in the dark wood, having lost the way. And maybe one more piece here. That's a poem here from David Wagner. And maybe I'll just read it to begin with, and I won't make many comments here along the way, but here's what he says. He says, "Stand still." So now we're getting into, well, what do you do when you're lost? So far, I've tried to say it's pretty normal. And in a way, it's the pathway to a deepening of who we are. And it comes after a few successes and after a few adolescent hopes and dreams have run their course. And I've tried to say that being sincere is an important ingredient for how to be in the darkness here. And here Wagner says, "And what do you do when you're lost? You stand still. Stand still. The trees ahead and the bushes behind you are not lost. The trees ahead and the bushes behind you are not lost. Wherever you are is called here. And you must treat it as a powerful stranger." This is the line that came to me in the last couple days. Like, I don't really know what I'm doing here. I'll be honest. I don't really know. I don't really know. I know why I say I moved here, but I don't, now that I'm here, and I don't really know. It's like a powerful stranger. Here is a powerful stranger. He says, "And you must treat it as a powerful stranger, must ask permission to know it and be known. Ask permission of the here, with a capital H-E-R-E, capital H, a here. Ask permission to know it and to be known. The forest breathes, listen. It answers, I have made the place around you." This is the hidden and the hidden language of the forest itself. Jung says that nature, by the way, is an incomparable guide if you know how to follow her. That's a line from Jung. Nature is an incomparable guide if you know how to follow her. She is like the needle of the compass pointing north. And Wagner knows a little how this compass works, and he's saying that the forest is speaking. He says, if you leave this place, you may come back again, saying here. No two trees are the same to raven. No two trees are the same to raven. No two branches are the same to wren. If what a tree or a branch does is lost on you, you are surely lost. I think that's a little comment just on our mechanized, modern, sophisticated, technocratic, economy, war-worshipping machine in which you and I forget what a tree or a branch does. It's lost on us, and we feel even more lost. And so then he says, stand still again. Stand still. The forest knows where you are, and you must let it find you. I think he's speaking in a paradoxical way. He's speaking symbolically, about how to be when we're lost, and that what's often asked is for us to stand still, and rather than run and rush and move and manifest and make happen. And when it's in a strange kind of silly, kind of embarrassing way, when I'm anxious, I speed up. I don't know what I'm doing, so I'm going to do it faster. So this line really cuts to the core here. Stand still right now. Stand still. The forest knows where you are, and you must let it find you. And he is speaking symbolically about how to be in this kind of existential, dark, cloudy woods that I've been trying to speak about. But I also think he's being quite literal. Like, go to the forest. Nature is an incomparable guide. Go lean your back against a tree that was here before you were born and will be here when you die. Go put your toes in the river that is ever flowing toward the sea, in which one day the remaining particles of your physical body will make their way into the ground, into the earth, and into the soil, and into the fissures, in the rocks and the underground rivers and streams, and you'll join the ocean, and only to be caught up again in the clouds, in the mystery of the cycle of the way things are. Stand still. The forest knows where you are. You are as much a part of the wild world as anything else. You're as natural as anything in nature. The great lie of the modern world is that there's the natural world and then there's us. That somehow we know that. Like, I'm not saying anything to you that you don't already know, but there's a difference between knowing it and experiencing. And he's saying, yeah, when you're lost, stand still. And when you're lost, go to the forest and stand still. Let it speak its ancient language to you. Let the powerful stranger that knows much more about belonging whisper into your ear. Doesn't tell you how to get out, doesn't tell you how to be found. It just simply is, and invites us into being here now with the world. Something like that. So I'll just read the final lines of this poem one more time, and maybe I'll just read the whole thing and let it do its work. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for listening. I hope you hear a hint, a guess, a clue. Stand still. The trees ahead and the bushes behind you are not lost. Wherever you are is called here, and you must treat it as a powerful stranger. Must ask permission to know it and be known. The forest breathes. Listen. It answers, I have made the place around you. If you leave it, you may come back again saying, here. No two trees are the same to raven. No two branches are the same to wren. If what a tree or a branch is lost on you, you are surely lost. Stand still. The forest knows where you are. You must let it find you.